because the whole ethos of family teams is we are trying to understand biblical theology, first principles about the nature of family, and that we want to build our families and build our lives and build our intuitions about justice and righteousness on the truth of Scripture and not on our feelings, and certainly not on some kind of hyper-Western idea of freedom, which is always going to lead you into some kind of form of idolatry.
Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey ho, everybody. April and I are back, and today is our anniversary. Happy anniversary, babe.
Thank you. You too. Yes.
Yes.
Today is 26 years
Yeah?
that we have been blissfully one.
Yeah? You want to keep going?
Yeah, I think so. I think we should give it another, 25 years.
That's right. Yeah.
Your
Hopefully
we're at the beginning of our second quarter of a century.
Our second quarter of a century?
Yeah, we're at the beginning of it.
Okay. Does that mean we're going to live until like 120 or something?
Yeah, I know. That's what I was thinking. He said, maybe you could get to 100.
My dad wasn't a math major, so I mean...
I mean, they're at 56?
Yeah, they're going strong. Yeah.
They're past half of a century.
Yeah, maybe they're... Did you say, does that mean you guys are only only at the halfway point?
Ooh, yeah.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, so 26 years. And now April and I just got back. We were in Denver, then Maui, and then we were flying back through Seattle to get to Cincinnati, and we had an experience. So that was kind of rough. So I will read this to you guys, and I wanted to get April's reaction. She was there, so I'm sure we had some conversations at the time, but I feel like this is a tough topic. I don't really enjoy talking about this one, but I think it's really important, and I've been processing how to think about this, and I assume everyone else out there has encountered this topic, but I don't. I think we're probably all trying to figure out what to think about it. So, the title of this, I wrote a little article to kind of get us going. This is Gay Marriage and the Hidden Cost of Surrogacy. So going through security at the Seattle-Tacoma airport this week, my wife and I had a disturbing experience. In front of us in line was a man with a 4-day-old baby. And I watched this man do multiple unnatural things with this newborn I have never in my life seen a mother do. He put that child in danger multiple times. And finally, my wife stepped in to help him, much to his relief. As she held this helpless infant in her arms, the man told us he was meeting his husband soon, that they had just received this child from his mother, who was a surrogate. As the whole situation slowly dawned on us, that this man had paid money to take this child from his mother, that this baby would live his entire life never knowing the love of a mother, that every tear this baby would cry would be for a mother who would never respond, that this clueless man was somehow expected to know how to care for this infant, and that this was done by design in order to make a profit and to satisfy the desires of two grown men, and that it was all legal. We both just lost it. I can't believe our society has agreed to this. Quote, surrogacy splices women apart, says the child won't care, says child advocate Katie Faust, who offers novel perspectives like a child's rights matters more than adult desires, and that, quote, adults are supposed to do hard things for kids instead of the other way around. She points out that adults, the humans with the fully formed brains and emotional intelligence, are supposed to do the hard things. Adults are supposed to understand, accommodate, and support their children, not vice versa. Yet when adult desire is prioritized over the rights of children, the parent-child relationship appears reversed. In the fight over so-called marriage equality, powerful organizations lobbied on behalf of gay rights, but we somehow forgot to consider whether a child has any rights. Now children are produced, bought, and sold to ensure a gay couple who entered into a marriage sterile by nature can unnaturally force a child to meet the adult's desires by tearing the infant away from his or her mother. Faust argues that, quote, surrogate born children in these circumstances experience the primal wound of losing their birth mother, an experience well documented among adopted children. She argues that surrogacy is by its very nature an injustice to the child. Birth is intended to be a continuation of the mother child bond, not the moment at which the child suffers an intentional, primal wound. It's the day when a baby should see the mother she already loves for the first time, not the last. So remember, this crime is premeditated and is being committed in front of all of us. Unbelievable. So check out Katie Faust's book, Them Before Us, and understand that when we play with God's design for the family, the humans who always pay the largest price for our rebellion are children. Okay. So, yeah, like I said, this very challenging topic. And yeah, I'm still kind of processing what happened. And I know, April, you obviously had that experience, and we both had our, probably emotional and then mental reactions. But yeah, what did that stir up for you?
Oh, man. It was very upsetting. It was a bizarre experience to go through because I didn't understand what was happening most of the experience until it wasn't until afterwards, and it was just, like, washing over me. Like you said, it was, like, slowly dawning on us. "Wait, what? What just happened?" Um, there was this man with a stroller in front of us in the TSA pre-check line, and it just looked like an empty stroller. And when it came time for him to start putting stuff up on the security belt, he removed a blanket, which revealed a super teeny tiny baby under the blanket. And I was shocked because I assumed that the mom was somewhere with the baby, maybe in the regular line or something. And to see that there was an actual baby in there and that had had a blanket over it, I was like, oh, okay. Wow, and then so the man was trying to take the baby out of the stroller, this 4-day-old baby, so super tiny, and, he couldn't get the baby out and fold up the stroller at the same time, and that's when I offered to help, and I was gonna fold the stroller up for him, but he said, "Actually, would you mind holding the baby?" I was like, "Oh, I would love to," and he said, "This is 4-day-old, so and so," his name, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, you're." I'm thinking to myself, your wife is out and about at 4 days. I wonder what like, clearly these are strange circumstances for this to be the case. And someone even said, like, "Are you allowed to do that?" Like, the security worker, like, that baby's too young. And he's like, "I don't know. Like, at the hospital, they just cleared us and said we could go." And, um, then when I handed the baby back to him, he's like, "Oh, thank you. I'm still not sure how to hold a baby." And we walked through security, and then he needed me to hold the baby again so that he could unfold the stroller and go through the whole thing. And that's when he said something about his husband being in the other line and that they're from, a different city, and they're here to pick up their surrogate baby. And I just instantly started praying a blessing over this baby. I didn't even fully know, it hadn't really dawned on me yet what was happening, but I was like, "This baby needs a blessing," and so I, like, in my own way, I was like, "Take longer on the stroller so I can pray more over this baby," and I'm just this teeny tiny baby I'm holding, like, right here, and my instinct is just, to nestle that little baby and put him right up here and, on my shoulder, and, um, to hand the baby back to the man, and he doesn't know how to hold the baby and is, like, kind of cramming it back into its car seat, and I'm stroller and fastening the and I just, like, all of it, I'm just, like, all of a sudden feeling like I'm gonna throw up and, like, having these, like, physical reaction, and I'm, like, so worried, and my anxiety is just, like, through the roof. And I'm like, that it's not my problem. Like, why am I so freaking out so much? So just as Jeremy and I processed it, I'm just realizing like, I've never come face to face with this situation. I know about surrogacy. I know what the um, logistics of it are, but like who uses it, why they would use it, why a woman would like pay, be paid to give her body in such a way, um, is like what I hadn't thought through all of those things until that moment, and it just washed over me in that airport, and I just started bawling. I could not control myself, and I'm just like so we just were processing through the whole airport, just like, "What does this mean? How does a woman, essentially sell her body?" This is like to me, it feels like a form of prostitution, like you're selling your body for the purpose that only a woman can provide because you're trying to cheat the system and get everything you want out of it still, um, to 2 men who I don't care how effeminate you are, you're not a mom and you're not a mother, and the nurturing instinct isn't there, and I'm just thinking about this baby who needs to be held and cuddled and nurtured and fed and, just all these things, and I'm sure they're going to be attentive in some ways, and, but I just all of it from the side of, like, who is this woman that would do this? And then the fact I'm just thinking about this baby, and I think when I really started losing it was when Jeremy said, "That baby will never have a mother." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, this is what are we doing? What is happening to our
Yeah.
society?"
Yeah. This
Like,
is,
that tragedy in another lifetime, in another era, that would be a tragedy. That would mean the mom died in childbirth.
Need a blueprint to revise your family to be a multi-generational team on mission? The book, Family Revision by Jeremy Pryor, is the book that summarizes all the big picture ideas you hear on this podcast. Available on Amazon or familyteams.com.
yeah. Yeah. And we're doing this intentionally. Like we were planning
Yeah.
this even before conception that this is going to be the arrangement. Um, yeah. And this is why you guys, I think it's so important. Part of what we try to advocate for through things like family teams is that God has a design for family. And I think sometimes people are like, well, yeah, but that's just our opinion. The Bible has a design. God created family for a reason, but we live in a secular culture. And so we don't want to bring, our religious ideas into politics. What right do we have? Well, the problem, you guys, is that, that when marriage and family are distorted and they were designed by God and then they're taken and then twisted, um, really negative things occur. And so, there's a few things about this that I'm processing, just trying to understand. One element is I don't know how can't be considered human trafficking. Like,
Right.
to me, this is the definition of human trafficking. You're taking a baby, a 4-day-old baby away from his mother and, handing the baby off again, because he's been bought and paid for and the mother's been paid off. I think that you could look at that, and I think that it would be not that difficult to try to prove, in court that or through legislation that this should be illegal and that should be considered human trafficking. But I don't think that will ever happen, again in our culture because of gay marriage. I know that heterosexuals can use surrogacy as well, and there's equal issues I would have with that. But I would think that we could demonstrate, the problem, and even in that case, you do have an adopted mother, in the mix, right? In this
Right.
case, that this child will never have a mother, and that because society is very similar to the abortion debate in that, like, people are it's really the ends justifies the means. It's like we know this is murder in the abortion case, but because adults have a need that's this intense, we need to ignore sort of the actual facts that are clearly happening. And I think in a very similar way with this kind of handing over children to, to a gay couple, two men, I think that sense is, well, look, they're going to have to live the rest of their lives. Like the whole idea is to get to marriage equality. Like we want to pretend like it's possible for two men to get married and have an identical experience to a heterosexual couple. In fact, we're going to take what is natural and normal in a heterosexual relationship, and we're going to try to systematically hand that through unnatural means, through legislation, through just sort of all pretending as a society like this is calling his gay lover a husband. Like we're going to use all the words that were created inside of this world of marriage and family, and sort of through sort of a societal decision, just like fiat, we're just going to declare that's a marriage, that's a dad, and that's one aspect of this that I find so
Yeah.
troubling, is that it's we're and in one level, I'm very sympathetic to the argument that, like, how much do you really want to get involved in what adults do? Like, especially that don't believe. Like, I don't necessarily want to use the power of the state to get involved in what two consenting adults do. The problem is that it never stops there, right? And this is why words matter, concepts matter, covenants, marriage, God's design matters, because it always implicates children. I mean, it's just a matter of time. There's no way to create a firewall between we're all going to pretend like this is a marriage and then suddenly stop and say, yeah, you are married just like a heterosexual couple, but you don't have the same rights to adopting children as a heterosexual couple, and you're not going to have the rights to surrogacy that a heterosexual couple might have. Now, again, I'm not in favor of surrogacy in any situation, because it always puts the needs of the adults ahead of the children. And I think Katie Faust has made that point so well in her book. By the way, I was talking to her today on Twitter, and she was
Mm.
going to jump on the family teams podcast with me and kind of process her book, because I really want to understand. There's a lot of, like, Katie Faust is really getting into a really deep theology of family, deeper than most people do, because because she's really having to have these conversations at the policy level. And so I'm really interested to talk to her about. She's coming to some conclusions that are fascinating, about no
Mm.
fault divorce and a lot of things that are very controversial, but really hit on the theology of family. But yeah, I think those are kind of the two. I don't know what that's stirring up for you, April, but I'm like, the two areas that this is really striking me in is, one, this feels identical to human trafficking, and simply because we can make laws to make it legal doesn't seem to me like it makes it any less human trafficking. It just makes those laws terribly unjust. And then over here, this seems like a direct result of choosing to take God designed elements of marriage and family, and as a culture, sort of hand those in unnatural ways to whoever, to various alternative lifestyles. And what's really happening in the situation is a mother is being erased. Motherhood itself is being erased. And this is part of why, like, you see cultures that are passing laws to change mother and father to parent one, parent two on all legal documents, because it creates a discrimination against primarily gay couples to say who's the mother, who's the father. And so in an attempt at creating this kind of equality, we're robbing children of the right to a mother and a father. Um, I don't know how else to process it than that. Like, we've just made a decision that adult desires matter so much, and there's nothing to protect the children from this kind of a from this kind of, like, slippery slope from happening, because the barriers that would stop this from happening require us to go back to something like the Bible and make a almost religious based argument about the nature of family. And as soon as you say, look, you're not allowed to do that, the politics is a purely secular realm, well, then you're already ceding to sort of the secular world that the only way to define marriage is, that everything's a social construct, that marriage is a social construct. It's not essentially religious, that family is a social construct. It's not essentially from God. That all these things, justice itself is a social construct. And as a believer, and that there are certain things in Scripture, they're there because we actually are dependent on divine revelation to help us understand the nature of family, the nature of marriage, the nature of justice. And in a democracy, our our opinions need to be certainly preserved, and we need to have the ability to say, yeah, we are deriving these from divine revelation. We think that's the only way to derive these things. And what's amazing is when we do that, everything works. Mothers are mothers, fathers are fathers, children are cared for. Children have mothers and fathers. Like, people understand the purpose of gender, the purpose of family. And once you violate that and say we're going to redefine family, redefine marriage, redefine gender, you're going to unleash a kind of chaos that we've never seen in the Western world. But to agree to that will cause you to say, "Oh, we are dependent on divine revelation." Then, like, the only people who seem to see through all this nonsense are people who study this ancient book called the Bible, written in the Bronze Age. How did that happen? And that's kind of what's happening. People are, one by one. There's a number of people that are suddenly realizing that's the only thing that stands between kind of Western civilization, and the chaos that's coming.
Yeah, I mean, this is natural consequences. These are the things that we're talking about are natural consequences of the slippery slope that we've been on as a society for the last 100, 200 years. It's these sometimes minuscule changes that come one little tiny bit at a time, but they end or not end, but they bring us to this place where we're at, where all of a sudden we have legal human trafficking and people playing pretend family. I mean, that's what it makes me think of. It's like
Yeah.
two little boys playing family. Like, I want like all the things family has to offer without, you know, the design that is meant to be and the violation of all those things. And it's just, this is what we wanted, society. Here we are. And the redefining, like you said, like, words matter. I am amazed at the vocabulary changes that have been shifting over time. And one of my daughters just yesterday showed me a video that is, I guess there's all this new nonsense vocabulary coming out from, like, Gen Alpha. And so they had this little skit, and it was like a teacher and her student, and they were talking, and it's like you didn't understand half of what they were saying because it's this, like, nonsense language that they're making up, Gen Alpha's making up, but because of social media, it's spreading like wildfire, and so it's like they're just inventing these words, and I'm thinking, words matter and definitions of words matter, and there are so many words being redefined for us, and to say husband, like a man saying "my husband," that is not the right definition. I mean, I'll be bold and say that, like, that is not what a man married to a man, that's not a husband, so it's just like all these things have become so faux pas to question, but they're kind of tearing away at the fabric of our society and our country being founded on, Judeo-Christian values. It's quickly, like you're saying, it's like the believers can see through this stuff, but because our country was founded on those types of beliefs, it's we're getting slowly more and more slowly away from that. It's just like, here we are. I don't know. It's yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is really confusing ground to try to defend. When
Yes.
the family teams weekends that we do, we oftentimes I spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of the first talk trying to make the argument that definitions that basically family is being destroyed by definition. Like, and I think the left has discovered that you can you can really change almost anything by changing definitions. You don't change the nature of things as they are in themselves, but you can change people's perceptions of reality through just getting a hold of the definition and twisting it in some way, and then forcing everyone to use your language. And this is why the whole debates around things like pronouns and like you have to say it. You have to say it. If you don't say it, you're guilty of in some countries you're actually guilty of hate speech. It's compelled speech to use our language. And so if you can get that stuff passed, it's so dangerous because it's very difficult to think outside of language. There's a philosopher, Wittgenstein. He was famous for saying philosophy is a battle against the bewitching of our intelligence by means of language. And his whole philosophy is that human beings are locked into perceptions that are created by words we use, vocabulary, and that we have to be very careful about the definitions of words, and because they actually alter our ability to think properly. And I think
Yeah.
that this is so important that we understand. And C.S. Lewis once said that, tell me what the hard words mean, and you've done more for me than a thousand commentaries. In other words, if you're, and
Mhm.
this is one of the reasons why April and I love to study Hebrew and sometimes Greek, and we love like the Blue Letter Bible. When we're studying the Bible, we're constantly talking about words and the definitions of words, the roots of
Yes.
words. Like we're trying to really understand, like, wow, that we have a faith based on a book. In that book are words, and yeah, grammar is important. There's a lot of elements to trying to translate something, but one of the things that anyone can really start to dig into is to understand the meaning of specific and important words in any passage. And so it's really good to go back
Yeah.
to those original languages and say, what is this word? Because there's no such thing as a one-to-one correspondence from one language to another of a word. There's always some nuance that's going to have to be dropped in a translation. But you can always try to go back to the original and say, okay, give me a fuller understanding of the nuance of that word. So I think that this is part of what we need to do as people who are dependent on divine revelation. We have to get a lot more serious about the way that words are being used, and we have to get a little bit more militant when words are being misused, because we need to be able to
Yeah.
think properly, and we need to be able to actually have conversations where we understand each other. And one of the things that happens in the biblical story is that you have at the Tower of Babel, really the speed of advancement is stopped because God comes down, and it really appears to be there's sort of a technological explosion happening that is causing people to get very proud. And so the languages are confused and they can no longer talk to each other. And I think that we're in a similar space right now where I think that we're using words differently, and especially words that are critical, that are kind of in the word themselves. They're like holding the meaning that is something that is divine or
Yeah.
sacred. We need to say, wait, you can't mess with that word. Inside of that word, it's carrying into our thoughts, into our hearts, into our understanding, and into our conversation something sacred. When you use the word marriage or covenant or child or father, mother, son, daughter, you did not make those things. Those things were given to us as gifts from God, and that what we're trying to do is apprehend the divine theology of those concepts by studying those words, studying their original usage in original language, how they're described in various parts of scripture. And then from that foundation, we're going to build our understanding of that concept. And if you then, wait for thousands of years while that concept's being constantly, extrapolated, but it's still based on that foundation, and just try to pluck it off the top, take it away from the foundation, and put it somewhere else, and say, no, this is actually founded on a social construct. If you burrow all the way down to the bottom, you have just some society somewhere that arbitrarily decided what these things mean. You've destroyed the ground of meaning, and now there's I don't know how you would stop the whole society, it's like civilization, from crumbling, from
Right.
being from having the foundation of it smacked in that way and taken out from what actually causes these sacred words to have meaning. So I think within our conversations, we have to be aware that that move is being made, and that we need to be at least amongst ourselves, and as we're discipling and raising families, we need to be really precise about the meaning of words that hold divine sacred concepts.
Yeah. I was thinking even I've had this thought a lot since the whole pronoun thing came out, starting with the idea that, like, so I've spent a lot of years trying to learn Hebrew in my slow aging brain. But the interesting thing about Hebrew and many other languages is that who you're talking to, their gender and the plurality or the singularity of that person, or that group of people, is how you conjugate verbs
Right.
and sometimes nouns even. And so the way that to mess with a building block of a language, we don't experience it as much in English because we don't have, like, for the word you, it just is you
Yeah,
for if you're
gendered.
talking to a group of people or one, the gender. But in Hebrew, you really, really see it. And it's like I am learning future tense in the verbs for the 8th time, and I'm still trying so hard, and everything is involved on, like, the what's the first step? Find the pronoun, like, who are we talking to? And so it's like it is a building block
Right.
of foundational of a language, and for us to just, like, throw that out or act like it's not a big deal, like, hang on a second, this is a big deal,
Right.
you know? Um, a
Every noun
pronoun
in
is
Hebrew is gendered, right? Like, it's not just
yeah,
people. Like, tables
right,
have a gender, like,
yes,
doors have a gender.
refer to them as their
Everything
gender,
has a gender in Hebrew.
yes. It's so fascinating when God says, like, "I created male and female, he created
Yeah.
them," and it's like, he just it's like
Right.
a building block, and
Yeah.
for that to be it's like we have to be aware that this is the what's the agenda behind this?
Right.
Even it could even be the enemy's agenda. I don't know if any human understands the agenda that's going on, but the destruction at that kind of level, if we allow it, is quite frightening.
Are you following us on Facebook and Instagram yet? Look up at Family Teams to get even more free content and never miss out on event announcements.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's and I think that I believe that the genders exist primarily to reflect motherhood and fatherhood. Like, they're all a the reason why male and female is so critical in scripture is because maleness is fatherliness and and femaleness is motherliness, right? And so when you're looking at a 5-year-old and you're saying you need to, grow up and become a man, here are some characteristics of masculinity. What you're going to do is describe for him an ideal father. These are things that a father should learn to do. When you lead a family, you need to become a man, and becoming a man means to be fatherly. And here's what it looks like to be fatherly. And so this attack on gender is an attack on family and father and mother. That's why when recently, one of the publishers took Roald Dahl's books and tried to extract, mother and father. They said, we're going to get rid of the 10 most offensive words. And 2 of those were mother and father, and just try to replace that with parent. And one of the things that I didn't know, I had a conversation with Rabbi Lapa, and he mentioned this. I don't know if it was in our conversation or another time. I think it was in our conversation. He said the word parent does not exist
Oh,
in Hebrew in the Old Testament. That's why it doesn't say honor your parents in the 10 commandments. It says honor your father and mother. So essentially there is no such thing as
yes,
parenting in the Bible. There's only fathering and mothering. And so
yes,
what we're saying to these gay men who are taking this child is that it's not that they're going to just parent the child. It's that that child will never have the experience of being mothered. Yeah,
yeah,
there is no it's the whole experience of motherhood or being mothered is a basic part of what kind of creates the experience of a young child, and they're fathered and they're mothered. And so I think that and that women have a very they're built really from the ground up in their DNA biologically. Every part of them is designed for motherhood, and men are designed for fatherhood. And I
yeah,
think that we've said, look, yeah, that all exists and that's critical and that's what creates the most healthy children. But there might be an individual who might not want in their freedom to play the role of father, even though they might be built for it. in their DNA and in their biology, or there might be a woman who might not want to play the role of mother. And so this is the primary lens through which we're seeing fatherhood and motherhood as sort of an identity choice. And it's not really an identity choice. It's something that you're built for, and that as soon as you have a child, for the sake of the child, you choose that. For the sake
Yeah.
of loving that child, there's a lot of elements of fatherhood that felt very um, difficult for me to embrace. And the more I
Mhm.
studied fatherhood, I'm like, okay, here's one that I feel is very natural for me. Here's one that for whatever reason I'm really struggling with. And I'm like looking at my children in the eyes, and I'm like, I love them, and I want them to have the experience of fatherhood to the best of my ability. And so I'm going to
Mhm.
sacrifice my personal freedom as an individual to try to express myself in a hyper individualistic way. And I'm going to try to adopt elements of fatherhood that otherwise to me would feel a little bit less natural or less obvious, less attractive to me or whatever. And I'm going to attempt to live those out for your sake. This is not about me. And this is why I love Faust's book, Them Before Us. The whole idea, and this is the real beauty of having children, is that it suddenly forces you to think about somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Above yourself. And this is the primary way you do that. You adopt an identity as a mother, all the parts that feel really good and natural and normal and comfortable to you, and the parts that don't, right? And
Yeah.
then the father does the same thing, and you agree together that we're going to become fathers and mothers. We're going to lean into this role as hard as we can. There's lots of things that are happening biologically to us as that child is born and brought into the world. The mother is There's all kinds of hormones going off and things that are helping her move her in the direction of really the design of motherhood that is really ultimately best for a child. There's even, hormonal things happening inside of a father that occur when that baby's born that help move him in the direction of fatherhood. And what we experience often for the first time in our lives is the feeling of the desire to put someone above ourselves, to say, I ultimately want to sacrifice my life for this child. And that is a spiritual experience, right? And so I'm looking at these two men and I'm like, who's having that experience right now where you almost smother the baby? Like, it's actually the exact opposite of that experience. You are saying in that moment, our needs are more important. You're
Yes.
declaring that over this whole situation, over that baby. What really matters is our needs. And so this baby, I know you're 4 days old and you're crying for your mother. You're going to cry for your mother for months. You're going to have to shut up and you're going to have to put up with the fact that we have needs as gay men, and we need you to meet our needs. That is
Yeah.
the opposite of what fatherhood is. That's the opposite of what motherhood is. That's the opposite of what God designed family to be.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah. Well, that was hard. I don't like talking about that.
I know. It's a really obviously like a bizarre topic.
Yeah,
It I feel like it's one of those things that just slid into our society,
it
like,
did.
all these technologies that we have allowed because of, like, infertility and things like that, have allowed like, just kind of given us a lot of sympathy for this, like, idea of, like, "Oh, but what about the people who can't have kids?" And it
Right.
just kind of, like, slipped in there to be in this, kind of like a category,
Yes.
and it's just like, "Wait, wait, 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 like, what is happening? What does this mean? How is this okay?" So, I see how it would be a very, potentially offensive thing to talk about, but, we can't just let it slip in and leave
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we have to deal with these things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, stay tuned. If you're not subscribed to the Family Teams podcast, head over there and make sure you are, because I'm going to have an interview with Katie Faust, and we're going to have this conversation because she is really attempting to get back to first principles and trying to evaluate technologies and policies based on first principles. And this
Mhm.
is really hard. Like you said, it's really been slippery. It's like, okay, we don't really know what a family is, or like we don't really know how God designed this. And so, but we feel really compassionate about this. And so she's thought deeply about like IVF, and various infertility treatments, and like what are the first principles maybe suggest about that, and how might we think about policies from that regard. She's thought deeply about adoption. She's obviously thought very deeply about surrogacy. So yeah, we're going to need to get into this stuff, guys, because the whole ethos of family teams is we are trying to understand biblical theology, first principles about the nature of family, and that we want to build our families and build our lives and build our intuitions about justice and righteousness on the truth of Scripture and not on our feelings and certainly not on some kind of hyper Western idea of freedom, which is always going to lead you into some kind of form of idolatry. So we're done. Thanks, April, for talking to me about
Yeah.
that. I know that's a challenging topic, but yeah, I felt like we needed to cover this and explore it. So appreciate the conversation, and thank you guys for
Yep.
listening.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.